The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as Commander Vex'thal of the Kryllian Hegemony displayed the recovered human weapon. The cylindrical object, no longer than his foreclaw, seemed almost pathetic under the chamber's crystalline lights. This, he announced, mandibles clicking in what his species considered laughter, is what the humans call a bullet, a primitive metal projectile propelled by controlled chemical explosions. The chamber erupted in amused chittering and harmonic vibrations. Their entire military doctrine revolves around throwing pieces of metal at relativistic speeds. How quaint. Ambassador Thelnera of the Ascendancy leaned forward, her luminescent form pulsing with curiosity. Surely they possess energy weapons, plasma cannons, graviton disruptors? Oh, they have a few, Vex'thal replied, his translator dripping with condescension. But these kinetic weapons remain their primary armament. Even in space combat, they actually fire physical projectiles across the void. He paused for effect. Their largest warships are essentially flying fortresses designed to hurl enormous metal slugs at their enemies. It's like fighting with slingshots. The Council's military advisor, a towering Dreymoth named Rex, rumbled his disapproval. This seems inefficient. Our youngest cadets train with pulse weaponry. The idea of manufacturing millions of individual projectiles. He trailed off, unable to conceptualize such waste. It gets worse, Vex'thal continued. Their ground forces carry devices that create small, contained explosions to propel these projectiles. Each soldier requires a constant supply of ammunition. They're entirely dependent on supply chains. One disrupted logistics line, and they're defenseless. What none of them knew was that 3 human vessels had just translated into the outer system. The UNS Indomitable, the carrier Wellington, and the heavy cruiser Moscow hung in the black, running silent, their crews preparing for what High Admiral Marcus Chen knew would be a historic engagement. They think we're primitive, Chen muttered from the Indomitable's bridge, studying the holographic display of the Kryllian fleet surrounding the disputed colony world of New Sarajevo. 47 alien vessels, their energy signatures blazing like beacons. Let them think it. Helm, begin the approach. Communications, send the prepared message to all ships, for those who came before. The Kryllian sensor operator noticed the human ships first. His secondary eyes widened in disbelief. Commander, 3 vessels approaching on attack vector. They're not even attempting stealth. Their engine signatures are— I see them, Vex'thal interrupted. 3 ships against our fleet? Have they lost their minds? Wait, are those launch signatures? The operator's scales paled to white. Confirmed. Multiple launches from all 3 vessels. Over 200 projectiles inbound. Tracking solutions indicate they're just missiles, Commander. Chemical rocket propulsion, conventional explosive warheads. No exotic matter, no quantum effects, just explosives. Vex'thal's laughter was sharp. Don't even bother with point defense. Let our shields absorb them. I want these humans to see how outmatched. The first missile struck the heavy cruiser Nexus Prime. Except it didn't explode, not immediately. The warhead penetrated the shield, passing through the coherent energy field like it wasn't even there, and buried itself in the hull before detonating. The shaped nuclear charge turned the cruiser's port side into expanding plasma. Shields are ineffective, the sensor operator shrieked. The projectiles are physical matter. They're passing through the shield matrices. Vex'thal felt his combat training reassert itself over his shock. All ships, evasive maneuvers, switch to kinetic barriers, return fire with pulse cannons. The alien fleet's energy weapons lanced through space, beautiful streams of coherent particles and focused plasma. They struck the human ships and splashed harmlessly against thick angular armor plating designed to dissipate thermal energy. The humans had built their warships like flying tanks, layered with composite armor, Whipple shields, and reactive plating. Their armor is primitive but effective, the tactical officer reported, struggling to keep his voice steady. Our energy weapons are designed to overwhelm energy shields, not ablate physical matter. We're barely scratching them. Then the human ships closed to what the Kryllians considered point-blank range, a distance where their sensors could barely distinguish individual vessels, and opened up with their main batteries. The Indomitable carried 6 railgun turrets, each capable of accelerating a 500-kilogram tungsten penetrator to a significant fraction of light speed. When they fired, there was no dramatic light show, no energy bloom, just the sudden appearance of hypersonic projectiles that punched through alien hulls like tissue paper. The cruiser Moscow added its contribution, dozens of smaller Gauss cannons and a broadside that would have made an 18th-century naval officer weep with joy. Each projectile was guided by simple but effective terminal sensors, making minute adjustments to maximize damage. They're using physical armor, kinetic weapons, chemical rockets. The sensor operator was beyond panic now, simply cataloging the impossible. It's like fighting an opponent from our own ancient history, except they have perfected these primitive technologies to a terrifying degree. Captain Sarah Rodriguez of the Wellington smiled grimly as her fighter squadrons launched. "CAG to all birds, remember your training. These bastards have never seen atmospheric combat techniques. Show them what a death world produces." The human fighters, stubby, heavily armored craft that looked more like flying tanks than elegant interceptors, tore into the Kryllian formations. They didn't dogfight with energy weapons at range. They closed to distances the aliens considered suicidal and unleashed rotary cannons that fired thousands of rounds per minute. A Kryllian pilot watched in horror as a human fighter simply rammed through his wingman's shield and sheared off the vessel's command module with a sustained burst of 30mm rounds. They're insane. They fight like their shields don't exist. "That's because we barely use shields," Lieutenant Marcus Webb growled over the comm, his fighter rolling through a maneuver that would have killed any pilot not trained in 8G turns since childhood. "We're from a world where kinetic energy is the primary killer. We learned to dodge bullets before we learned to walk in 0G. On the ground, the Kryllian occupation force defending New Sarajevo was learning similar lessons. They'd prepared for energy weapon exchanges and coordinated shield warfare. What they got was an orbital bombardment of old-fashioned high-explosive shells, followed by drop pods that literally crashed through their defensive positions. Private Jen Mitchell rolled out of her pod's wreckage. The damned thing was designed to survive catastrophic entry and immediately opened fire with her rifle. The electromagnetic accelerator in her weapon sent 6mm tungsten flechettes downrange at velocities that turned Kryllian combat armor into shredded foil. Contact front, suppressing fire. Sergeant Davis didn't need to shout, their helmet comms worked fine, but old habits died hard. "Second squad, flank left. Third squad, prepare grenades." The Kryllians tried to adapt, raising kinetic barriers and repositioning. But the humans weren't fighting by any rules the aliens understood. They used smoke, actual chemical smoke, to obscure visual and thermal sensors. They employed indirect fire from mortars that arced shells over cover. They even used shaped charges to breach walls and attack from unexpected angles. Lieutenant Kreshta of the Kryllian ground forces found himself pinned behind what remained of a defensive wall, his scales trembling. "They don't stop," he gasped into his comm. "They coordinate without digital networks, just voice and hand signals. Our cyber attacks are useless. They advance under fire using physical cover. They're like predators from our own evolution, relentless, adaptive, savage." In orbit, Commander Vex'thal watched his fleet disintegrate. Of 47 vessels, 19 were destroyed, 15 were crippled, and the rest were frantically trying to disengage. The 3 human ships continued their methodical destruction, their armor scorched but intact, their weapons still firing. "Send the retreat signal," he whispered. "All ships jump to rally point Gamma. Alert the Council. Tell them—" He paused, searching for words. "Tell them we've made a terrible mistake. The humans aren't primitive. They're pragmatic. Every weapon, every tactic, every piece of equipment has been refined over millennia of constant warfare. They didn't abandon kinetic weapons because energy weapons were better. They kept both because they understand something we forgot." "What's that, Commander?" his aide asked quietly. "That war isn't about elegance or technological superiority. It's about killing your enemy before they kill you. And these humans, they come from a world that never stopped teaching them that lesson." Admiral Chen watched the Kryllian fleet scatter and felt no joy, only grim satisfaction. "Ceasefire. Let them run. Helm, bring us into orbit." over New Sarajevo. Communications, sent to fleet, mission accomplished. Casualties minimal, enemy force routed. He stood before the forward viewport, looking down at the liberated colony. You know what the difference is? He asked his XO. They looked at their technology and thought they'd reached the pinnacle. We looked at ours and kept asking, but will it kill the other guy? On the colony surface, Private Mitchell pulled off her helmet and breathed the recycled air of the settlement dome. Around her, civilians emerged from shelters, and her squad began the work of securing the area. Sergeant Davis clapped her shoulder. Hell of a first combat drop, Mitchell. She grinned. My grandpa always said we're the galaxy's premier problem solvers. And when the problem is there's an enemy over there, we've got millions of years of evolution and thousands of years of innovation dedicated to that exact solution. The Galactic Council received Commander Vex'thal's report in stunned silence. Ambassador Thelnera's light pulsed in what could only be described as fearful respect. They turned their entire world into a weapons laboratory, she said softly. Constant warfare, predator evolution, environmental pressures that would kill most sentient species. They didn't develop in spite of these factors. They weaponized them. The Council's military advisor nodded slowly. The humans call Earth a death world. We thought it was self-deprecation. It's a warning. Everything about them, their endurance, their aggression, their tactical thinking, their weapons philosophy, it's all the product of surviving on a planet that actively tried to kill them for millions of years. The recording of Admiral Chen's final transmission played through the chamber to the Galactic Council. Humanity's message is simple. We didn't come to the stars to fight, but we came from a world where everything fights. If you want peace, we're ready. If you want war, we've had 4 billion years of practice. Choose wisely. In the darkness between stars, the human fleet regrouped and resupplied. In their armories, millions of primitive bullets were manufactured. In their shipyards, more vessels were constructed with thick armor and brutal kinetic weapons. And on Earth, in the quiet places where humans gather to remember, names were added to memorials for those who fell defending New Sarajevo. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson. Never confuse simplicity with weakness, tradition with obsolescence, or restraint with inability. Humanity had brought excessive force to a galactic war, and excessive force, as it turned out, was exactly what the situation required. Some called it barbaric, others called it efficient. The humans called it Tuesday,